Hello there everybody, Martin here from Affinity for Commander. Today we have a game involving dinosaurs, zombies and some pretty crazy shenanigans, so without further ado, let's take a look at those opening hands. I am playing my Gishath Sun's Avatar Dinosaur Tribal deck, and keep an opening hand of Growing Rites of Itlamok, Samut the Tested, Thundering Spineback, Clifftop Retreat, Terramorphic Expanse, and Temple of the False God.
Jack is playing his Elminster control deck, keeping a starting hand of Archaeomancer, Tamiyo's Epiphany, Wizards of Thay, Stolen Identity, Reflecting Pool, a Plains, and an Island.
Jerry is playing his Wilhelt the Rotcleaver Zombie Tribal deck, keeping an opening hand containing Lich Lord of Unks, Rooftop Storm, Command Tower, Field of the Dead, Shipwreck Marsh, and 2 Swamps.
And finally, Lewis is playing his Jodah the Unifier Legends tribal deck, and keeps a starting hand consisting of RAWR Stone, Falthis Shadowcat Familiar, Widespread Thieving, Gisela Blade of Gold Knight, Idyllic Beachfront, Rogue's Passage, and Scalding Tarn.
I win the die roll and start things off by playing Terramorphic Expanse. I sacrifice the land, putting a forest into play tapped from my library, and pass to Lewis.
Lewis plays Scalding Tarn, and pays 1 life to sacrifice it. He searches his library for Zeotora's Proving Ground, puts the land into play tapped, and passes.
Jerry plays Field of the Dead and ends his turn.
Jack plays an island, and passes to Martin.
Typical control player. I play Clifftop Retreat and pass.
Lewis begins his turn by playing Rogue's Passage and taps out to cast RAWR Stone before ending his turn.
Jerry plays Urborg, Tomb of Yorkmoth, and with nothing more to do, passes to Jack.
Jack plays a Plains and casts Mind Stone. Unable to cast anything else, he passes.
I start my turn by playing Nea Panorama, and then cast Growing Rites of Itlamok. I look at the top 4 cards of my library, revealing the Godzilla Doom Inevitable from among them, and put the King of Monsters into my hand before ending my turn.
Lewis plays Idyllic Beachfront as his land for turn, and casts Widespread Thieving. He looks at the top 5 cards of his library, exiles one of them beneath the enchantment, and passes to Jerry.
Jerry plays Command Tower, casts Thought Vessel, and passes.
In his turn, Jack plays a Plains and casts Azorius Signet.
That's a lot of early game mana rocks.
With 3 mana open, he ends his turn.
I played Temple of the False God, which thankfully taps to produce black mana due to Jerry's Urborg.
Bet he regrets playing that now.
Next I cast Samut the Tested and activate her +1 ability with no targets. Out of mana, I pass to Lewis.
Lewis begins his turn by playing Yavimaya Coast, and pays 1 life to the Pain land in order to cast his commander, Jodah the Unifier. Widespread Thieving triggers, creating him a treasure token, and Lewis passes the turn.
Jerry plays Shipwreck Marsh and casts his commander, Wilhelt the Rotcleaver. Choosing not to sacrifice his only creature to the zombie's trigger, Jerry ends his turn.
Jack plays an island, and just like Lewis and Jerry before him, casts his commander, Elminster. He activates the Planeswalker's +2 ability, drawing a card, and scrying one of the top 2 cards of his library to the bottom before passing to Martin.
In my turn, I cycle Godzilla Primeval Champion, closely followed by Godzilla Doom Inevitable.
Poor Godzilla, reduced to a tiny 2 mana draw effect.
Not yet finished, I play a mountain as my land for turn and activate Samut's +1 ability. I target Jodah in this way, which does absolutely nothing, as I then pass the turn.
Lewis starts his turn by casting Vega the Watcher, creating a treasure with his enchantment. Jodah's ability triggers, and Lewis exiles cards from the top of his library until he finds Passionate Archaeologist.
Now that is some serious synergy right there.
He casts the background, and Vega finally resolves. Not yet finished, Lewis sacrifices both of his treasures and taps out to cast Jodah Archmage Eternal.
Oh great, now there's 2 of them.
He creates a treasure token and exiles cards from his library until he hits Faldron Dreadwolf Herald. Lewis casts the Druid, drawing a card with Vega, and creating another treasure token. Passionate Archaeologist then triggers, and Lewis deals Martin 3 damage in this way. Extremely happy with his board state, he ends his turn.
Jerry plays Dracula's Tomb, a card that I did not know even existed, and casts Rooftop Storm. With his zombies now costing 0 mana, Jerry casts Lich Lord of Unks and moves to combat. Here he attacks Elminster with his commander, dealing him 3 damage, and passes to Jack.
Jack activates his Planeswalker's +2 ability, drawing a card and scrying 2. He puts both cards on top of his library, and casts Tamiyo's Epiphany for 2 mana thanks to Elminster's static ability. Jack scries 4, draws 2, and casts Kasmina, Enigmatic Mentor. He activates his new Planeswalker's -2 ability, creating a 2/2 wizard token before drawing, discarding, and passing the turn.
I begin my turn by playing Rogue's Passage and cast Tauren Mauler, who is technically a dinosaur.
He's whatever you want him to be.
Next I activate Sammet's +1 ability, targeting my Shapeshifter, and end my turn.
In his turn, Lewis takes 1 damage from Yepamaya Coast to cast Gisela, Blade of Goldnight, with his non-commander Jodah's ability. Martin puts a +1/+1 counter on his Shapeshifter, and the other Jodah's ability triggers. Lewis exiles cards on the top of his library until he finds the Reality Chip, which he casts for free. Martin puts a second +1/+1 counter on his creature, and Lewis deals 4 damage to Martin with his background and Angel's damage doubling ability.
I can foresee Gisela becoming a real problem this game.
Lewis creates a treasure and a 2/2 wolf token, and then sacrifices all 3 of his treasures to cast Falthis Shadowcat Familiar. Martin puts a counter on Tauren Mauler, and Lewis exiles the majority of his library until he hits Edrist Emberclaw Familiar. He casts the Lizard, dealing 4 damage to Jerry, and Martin puts a 4th +1/+1 counter on his Mauler. Lewis creates another wolf thanks to Faldron, and out of mana, moves to combat. Here he attacks Elminster with Vega, and Summit with Jodah, Archmage Eternal. Both Planeswalkers' loyalties are reduced to 0 by the Flyers, and Lewis passes to Jerry.
Jerry plays Secluded Courtyard, choosing Zombie, and casts Necroduality. I put a +1/+1 counter on my Shapeshifter, and Jerry passes the turn.
Jack plays a Plains and casts Supreme Verdict. The board is completely wiped of creatures, making Lewis very sad, and Jerry creates a 2/2 zombie with Decayed thanks to Wilhelt's ability. Next, Jack activates Kasmina's -2 ability, creating a 2/2 wizard, drawing and discarding. With a much emptier battlefield, Jack ends his turn, to which Martin responds by sacrificing his Naya Panorama. He searches his library for a forest, puts it into play tapped, and proceeds to his turn.
I start my turn by playing Evolving Wilds, which taps for black thanks to Urborg, and cast my commander, Gishath, Sun's Avatar. Moving to combat, I attack Lewis with my dinosaur, dealing him 7 damage. Gishath's ability triggers, and I put Wayward Sawtooth, Carnage Tyrant, Godzilla King of the Monsters, and Polyraptor into play from the top of my library.
Sweet. Oh, that is a lot of dinos.
I gain the city's blessing, making me #blessed, and move to my end step. Here Growing Rights of Itlimoc transforms into Itlimoc Cradle of the Sun, and I pass to Lewis.
Lewis makes a bit of a misplay in his turn, taking another damage from his Pain Land in order to cast the Child of Alara he hid away with Widespread Thieving, without casting a multicolored spell beforehand. Jack swiftly counters the spell with Lose Focus, so it doesn't really have an impact on how the game plays out, and Lewis creates a treasure token before passing the turn.
Jerry begins his turn by recasting his commander, only paying for the commander tax thanks to Rooftop Storm.
Such a good card.
Necroduality makes a copy of Wilhelt, who Jerry immediately sacrifices due to the legend rule. He makes himself a zombie when the creature dies, and casts Diagraph Captain, making a copy of the soldier when it enters the battlefield. Not yet finished, Jerry plays Watery Grave, having the land enter tapped. Field of the Dead triggers, creating him a 2/2 zombie, and Jerry moves to his end step. Here he sacrifices his regular zombie to Wilhelt, creating a decayed zombie and drawing a card. Both of Jerry's Diagraph Captains trigger when the zombie dies, and Jerry chooses to have Lewis lose 2 life in this way. With nothing more to do, Jerry passes to Jack.
Jack starts his turn by playing Tranquil Cove, gaining a life, and then casts Archaeomancer. He returns the Supreme Verdict in his graveyard to his hand with the wizard's ETB, casts Replicating Ring, and passes.
In my turn, I cast Savage Stomp, putting a +1/+1 counter on Polyraptor and having it fight Archaeomancer. The wizard is squashed, and I create a token copy of my raptor thanks to their Enrage ability.
Not bad for 1 mana.
Next I sacrifice my Evolving Wilds, searching my library for a plains and putting it into play tapped. Not yet finished, I tap all of my remaining lands and cast the COPPA Primal Calamity. I untap all of my lands when the Elder Dinosaur enters the battlefield, and then cast Thundering Spineback.
Do you have enough creatures there yet?
No, actually. Next I cast Rampaging Brontodon, and finally out of castable spells, move to combat. Here I attack Lewis with Gishath, Carnage Tyrant, Wayward Swordtooth and Polyraptor, and Jack with Godzilla. Unable to block, Lewis takes lethal damage, and choosing not to block, Jack takes 8. Gishath's ability triggers, putting Regal Behemoth, Thrashing Brontodon, and Verdant Sun's avatar into play from the top of my library, and I gain 17 life from the avatar's ability. I then become the Monarch as a result of Regal Behemoth's ability, and end my turn, drawing from the Monarchy as I do so.
Jerry casts Gravespawn Sovereign, creating a copy of the terrifying looking creature with Necro Duality. He then plays an island, creating a zombie with Field of the Dead, and taps 5 zombies to return the Lich Lord of Unks in his graveyard to the battlefield. Necro Duality triggers, creating a token copy of the Lich Lord, and Jerry activates the aforementioned creature's second ability. He targets Martin with the effect, and Martin responds by dealing 3 damage to both Diagraph Captains with one of Zakana's many abilities. Both zombies are destroyed, Jerry has Martin lose 2 life when they die, and creates 2 decayed zombies thanks to Wilhelt. The Lich Lord's ability then resolves with Martin losing 11 life and milling 11 cards.
Ouch!
Not yet finished making Martin suffer, Jerry activates the Lich's ability once again, losing Martin 11 more life and making him mill 11 more cards.
Double ouch!
Moving to his end step, Jerry sacrifices his tapped zombie token to create an untapped decayed zombie, draws a card, and passes to Jack.
Jack puts a night counter on Replicating Ring in his upkeep, plays Interplanar Beacon, and casts Supreme Verdict. The board is once again wiped of all creatures, making me a very sad dinosaur wrangler, and Jerry creates 4 decayed zombies with Wilhelt's ability when his non-decayed creatures are sent to the graveyard. Happy with his play, Jack passes the turn.
Martin begins his turn by casting Herald's Horn, naming Dinosaur, and then plays Boros Garrison. He returns Rogue's Passage to his hand with the land's ETB, and ends his turn, drawing a card from the Monarchy as he does so.
Jerry plays Reflecting Pool, creates a zombie, and casts Wilhelt. Jack responds to this by casting Ether Snatch, having Jerry's commander enter the battlefield under his control, and a rather sad looking Jerry moves to combat. Here he attacks Kasmina with his zombie, lowering her loyalty to 0, and passes to Jack.
In his turn, Jack puts another counter on Replicating Ring, and casts Wizards of Thay. Next, he casts Stolen Identity, creating a token copy of his wizards, and encoding the sorcery onto his original wizards with the spell's Cipher ability. Jack then moves to his end step, where he attempts to pacify Jerry's anger towards him by sacrificing Wilhelt to its own ability. He draws a card in this way, and passes the turn.
I choose not to reveal the top card of my library of Herald's Horn, draw it, and recast my commander. Moving to combat, I attack Jack with my Hasty Dinosaur, and he declares no blocks, taking 7 damage. Gishath's ability triggers, putting a Ranging Raptors, Zetalpa Primal Dawn, and Kinjali Sunwing into play from my library.
You have had some amazing triggers from that dino this game.
I know. Happy with my new board state, I move to my end step. Here I draw a card with the Monarchy, and end my turn.
Jerry plays Choked Estuary, revealing a swamp from his hand to have the land enter untapped. He makes a tapped zombie with Field of the Dead, and recasts his commander, who enters tapped thanks to Martin's Sunwing. Necro Duality once again makes a copy of Wilhelt, who instantly dies, leaving behind a tapped decayed zombie in his place.
How sad.
Not yet finished, Jerry casts Phyrexian Altar, and then moves to his end step. Here he sacrifices his tapped zombie to create a decayed zombie, draws a card, and passes to Jack.
Jack starts his turn by putting a 3rd night counter on his ring, and casts a Kicked Rite of Replication. He targets Wizards of Thay, creating 5 more tapped copies of the creature, and then casts Behold the Multiverse for a single blue mana. Jack scries 2, draws 2, and plays Azorius Chancery, returning a land to his hand as he does so. Still not finished, Jack casts Sol Ring and moves to combat. Here he attacks Jerry with his 2 non-tapped wizards, creating another 2 tokens with the wizard's myriad ability.
Now that is a lot of wizards.
I block the 2 copies coming at me with Gishath and Zatolpa, and Jerry blocks the original wizard with his zombie. He then takes 3 damage from the unblocked attacker and creates another decayed zombie when his zombie token dies. With his instant and sorcery spells now costing 7 less, Jack passes the turn.
Martin reveals Galter Primal Hunger as the top card of his library and puts the dinosaur into his hand before drawing for turn. Next he replays Rogue's Passage and casts the Galter that he just revealed for a measly 2 mana.
Value.
Not yet finished amassing his army of reptiles, Martin casts Wakening Sun's Avatar, wiping the board of all non-dinosaur creatures. Still not finished, he casts Soul's Majesty, drawing 12 cards, and casts Commune with Dinosaurs. Martin looks at the top 5 cards of his library, fails to find a legal target, and moves to combat. Here he attacks Jack with Gishath and Jerry with the rest of his non-summoning sick dinosaurs, dealing them 7 and 12 damage respectively. Gishath triggers, putting Apex Altasaur and Temple Altasaur onto the battlefield, and Apex Altasaur's ETB fizzles due to a lack of targets. With nothing more to do, Martin draws a card from the Monarchy, discards down to 7, and ends his turn.
Jerry begins his turn by casting Sol Ring and then plays a swamp. He creates a zombie which enters tapped and recasts his commander for what feels like the millionth time this game. As per usual, a copy of Wilhelt enters the battlefield, dies to the legend rule, and creates Jerry a tapped decayed zombie. Jerry then moves to his end step, sacrificing his regular zombie to make a tapped decayed zombie, drawing a card as he does so before passing to Jack.
Jack puts a counter on Replicating Ring, plays Reflecting Pool, and casts Teferi Timebender. He activates the Planeswalker's -3 ability, gaining 2 life and drawing 2 cards before casting Cyclone Summoner. All non-giant, non-wizard, and non-land permanents are returned to their owner's hands, apart from Jack's cards, as he apparently thought the summoner only affected his opponents.
Oops.
Still possessing 0 untapped creatures, Jack passes the turn.
In my turn, I recast Gishath and then move to combat. Here I attack Jack and before damage occurs, cast Congregation at Dawn. Unfortunately for me, what's left of my deck contains absolutely no dinosaurs, and I fail to find any targets to put on top of my library. Damage then occurs, and Jack takes lethal commander damage, knocking him out of the game. Gishath's ability then triggers, and I reveal 0 dinosaurs, surprising absolutely no one. With only 1 opponent left standing, I draw from the Monarchy, discard down to 7, and end my turn.
Jerry recasts Sol Ring and casts Army of the Damned. He creates 13 tapped zombie tokens, recasts Wilhelt once again, and moves to his end step. Here Jerry sacrifices Zombie to create a decayed zombie, draws a card, and passes to Martin.
I play a forest and cast Xenagos, God of Revels. Next I recast Kinjali's Sunwing and move to combat. Here I use Rogue's Passage to make Gishath unblockable and double her power with Xenagos' ability. I then attack Jerry with my commander, dealing him 14 damage, winning me the game. Well, that is it for another game. I hope that you enjoyed watching my army of dinos crush my opponents. I'd like to give a huge thank you to each and every one of our incredible patrons listed on screen, without whom we'd be unable to continue making content such as this, so thank you. Also, be sure to check out our affiliate links in the video description. It won't cost you anything extra to make your purchases through these, but it really helps out the channel. And finally, don't forget that you can help to support us in 4 quick and easy ways: liking this video, subscribing, hitting that bell icon, and leaving us a comment. I read every one. That's all for now though, we'll see you next time. Stay awesome!